since the end of spring ball, has anything happened, Steve Sipple, to change your expectations for Nebraska in 2023? I pose this question, this headline, as we are about a week away from being in Indianapolis.
Nothing that hits you over the head because it's been sort of a quiet off season, which is good. But what enhances my confidence in the program under Matt Rule is sort of this. I mean, what we see on a daily basis, what we experienced, for instance, when we went to Belton, Texas, and Houston, is this, and what we see as he puts together this 2024 recruiting class, which is at 24 players. What do you see, Sean? A lot of organization, right? You see a lot of structure. You see them verbalize what they want to do and then do it. Well, and that in some ways translates to me to the 2023 season, in that I expect to see organization and structure on the field. Football, to me, successful football to me is largely about organization and structure. Because what is football, Sean? You're just trying to minimize mistakes, right? It's what do you hear coaches say a lot? The team that often wins is the team that makes the fewest mistakes.
The details.
It doesn't beat itself. I think Rule has a track record in college football that tells you that his structure and organization makes sense at this level.
Yeah, I think Jeff Sims, just as we learn more, just think about back to Casey Thompson. If they were really worried about quarterback, would there have been a stronger push to keep Casey Thompson? Because you remember before that deadline to enter the portal.
This was subsequent of spring ball, right after spring ball.
You know, it looked like, oh man, Casey Thompson might stay and fight it out.
Right.
And you were on this big give him a chance to win the job campaign.
I was on that campaign,
and it didn't go so well for you.
No, it did.
But all of a sudden, then he put his name in the portal once the deadline hit on that day.
Casey
Thompson did, and that told you right there, because I think Matt Rule could have fought harder and maybe made some stronger assurances if they really felt like they needed Casey Thompson. But I think they felt like, hey, we got what we need and more.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that technically happened subsequent of spring balls. So yeah, that's something. But again, I guess I would go to the quiet of the offseason, which I always regard as a positive. As a positive. Nebraska in recent years has had very quiet off seasons. Now, it didn't translate into success for Frost. It didn't, but they didn't have a lot of trouble off the field. Pelini's teams, they had a significant amount of trouble for a while. Still won, but it wasn't always quiet.
When you say trouble, do you mean like guys leaving?
Like Ernest Suttle's breaking a beer bottle over a kid's head and getting arrested. A receiver running from campus police because he has marijuana. Those sort of things. You're not seeing any of that right now.
No. In fact, we lost our police chief in Lincoln today as we're taping this show. We don't even have a police chief right now in this city. So it's been a very quiet day of headlines for the Nebraska summer of headlines and
for Nebraska football.
No news is good news, and
usually it is, yeah.
But yeah, I think Matt Rule too has established kind of the boundaries of what he wants, and there is discipline in this program. I mean, I know there are guys running and doing extra things.
Oh, there's discipline
happening behind the scenes. It's not like this is some sort of country club offseason. I mean,
no.
There's a lot of accountability and discipline behind the scenes.
Well, that's something I'm glad you mentioned, because if you're a Nebraska fan, you're looking for reasons to have your confidence enhanced. That's one. You know what I'm not worried about with Matt Rule? Discipline. Yeah, we've seen enough already. You shared with me off air something that we're not going to bring it on air, but there's discipline.
Oh yeah,
there's discipline.
People being held accountable.
Yeah, it's not. And you know what? People are going to say, "Oh, come on, Sip." There's always that in this program. No, there's not. Under Riley, it got awful in terms of accountability. It was awful. I mean, there were plenty of stories about guys that weren't going to the weight room, not getting there on time, not going, period. And you could see it. It's
showing up late.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that Frost's program had a horrible discipline issue. I just think it was let's face it, their problems started at the top.
Well, in the COVID era, it just kind of clouded up the vision of it because of almost losing a lot of that 2020 year in what it normally would have been.
Okay.
And then even the spillover to 2021, it just didn't, like, that little window of 18 months there hurt Nebraska.
It did. Then I mean, COVID, the approach we liked, you and I liked their Nebraska's very aggressive approach, liked it, didn't work. 3-5. Okay. Then 2021 happened. 2021 was a weird year. They went 4-8. But they didn't seem like they were that far away. Then what happened? 2022 just unraveled.
It fell apart.
It just unraveled so quickly that it feels like in some ways we never really got a handle on exactly the things that were wrong because it unraveled so quickly in 2022.
Yeah, that Northwestern game, like there were moments you're like, wow, they look pretty good. And then you're like, wow, they're not very good.
No, God, I'll tell you what, that game, you're going to kill me for saying this, but is a pretty good example of why you got to be careful about taking a team overseas. When is your program equipped for it? I would argue that Nebraska's program under Frost wasn't equipped. It really hurt them. I mean, they came back and they didn't play very well.
They almost got beat by North Dakota.
Yeah, they didn't play very well against North Dakota. And then Georgia Southern, I don't know how many yards did they put up, Sean. They scored every time they had the ball almost. I mean,
they put up more yards than any opponent in Memorial Stadium history.
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting up there sort of mesmerized because we were thinking, oh, Nebraska's offense is moving the ball very consistently. It's just a matter of the defense getting some stops, which it never did against Georgia Southern. Okay. And Georgia Southern wasn't very good, it turns out. Very odd.